English because it is their own creation. Yeah. So, and in that case, maybe we could also think about Korean English is your own creation and something. Is it some the language that you speak a lot?
Which one? Which one?
I guess the difference is when you're speaking in Taglish, it's not classic. It's more similar to English. It's a mixture. It's still a mixture of Filipino and English, but it's not mixed in the same way. The syntax is different. So usually when you speak Taglish, it will be something like, "Are you guys understanding me?" Or diba? For example, when you start applying little Filipino euphemisms or expressions into English, but it's usually it has a wider class base. Most people can use a form of Taglish, but Konyo English is very different because the syntax is different.
So in other words, the Taglish has more positive connotation than the Konyo English. Okay? Yeah. So thank you very much for telling me something about that. Right. So now we can see that actually English is quite complicated, right? It's not as simple as it looks. Right. Now let me show you a little bit. Okay, thank you. Here are some polite needs, requests in Indian English that I got from the book of Jennifer Jenkins. Could you just read them and let me know if these are the English that you are familiar with? Yeah. So do you get the meanings of these sentences? Huh? Yep. So in terms of getting meaning, do you have any problems getting the meanings of these sentences? Yeah?
Not really, but I noticed that it's quite redundant.
That is quite redundant. Yeah, in what sense?
Can you please advance please?
You say that it's maybe too much formal something? That's what you mean. So you mean like, kindly please is redundant. Okay. But at least in terms of meaning, you all get the meaning. Okay. So anyone want to say anything about this? Are these different, or are they different to the ways you use English to make a request? How is it different? Huh? It says too wordy here. Okay, how about others? Yes?
Ma'am, we were always taught to speak briefly. For example, you'd always say brevity is the soul of wit, right? So, for example, if we'd say, I respectfully submit the following few lines for a favor of your kind consideration. May I suggest that, rather than such a whole goulash of words. So it's and then the spelling of favor is, it's not this is British spelling, right? So we would use the American usage, but then again, our American usage, quote unquote, is quite different too. Like, for example, there's the word this is just to point out it's different. The word salvage in American English is actually to save something, but in the Philippines, when we salvage somebody, we kill somebody. So it's just to put Filipino English in perspective. So.
Okay. Thank you very much. Yeah. So at least you explained to me. So when you make a request, you tend to use the shorter sentences.
Yes.
Right. And also you also imply that you're more influenced by American English. Yeah. Okay. And this one is more British, perhaps. But no, I think I must acknowledge that not all people in India speak like this. But perhaps certain groups of people in India maybe because I'm not sure how authentic these are, because I got it from the book of Jennifer Jenkins, who has been famous for her work in English as a lingua franca. Yep. And I asked many of my Indian students who study in Australia, and then I asked them like, why they, as you said, some of you may think that they are very polite, very formal, and maybe too polite. Yes, what did it say?
Very respectful.
Very respectful. Yes, yeah. And then I asked them, why is that? They say, and they give me different explanation. Some say that, a lot of the English they study in India, it's the kind of English in the colonial times, the Queen's English. So very formal English. Yep. And also some of them explain that they get, influenced by their first language when they use English. Because in their first language, they are expected to show a lot of respect, to show a lot of formality, and also to show, the class and the caste they belong. So, in the way they use English, that also needs to reflect that degree of formality and respect. Yeah. So you may see that it is very respectful and formal. But the point is that all of you tell me that you have no problems understanding the meaning of these sentences, right? Okay. And even though you explain that, and you can say that these are not how you use or how you normally use English.
Right.
Okay. But now my next question is that, but does it mean that these people's English are wrong?
Good question.
No, listen, thank you, yeah, at least. So the point is that it doesn't mean that when people use English differently from us, then their English is wrong. It doesn't necessarily mean so, right? And also, there are debates, when people say, if, let's say, in India now they have about 1.2 billion people, right? I think roughly, but of course not all of them have access to English. So let's say about if 300 million people use English in a roughly similar way like this. 300 million is a lot. What is your population? 90 million, right? And Vietnam we have 86 or 88 millions. And let's say maybe Vietnam, Philippines, Thailand, and a bit of Cambodia, a bit of Laos, and Singapore, we end up perhaps it's still less than 300 million. And how can we say that those people in India don't know how to use English, right? At least that is how they use English. So the point is that when we use English in our communities, in our own countries, we add things to English. We make English, the word for English is that appropriate. You appropriate English. And, and some people even like the word, they even use the word, you localize English. And for global purposes. So English, it travels around the world. But when people often say that when you go to Rome, you do what the Romans do. So when English travels to the Philippines, it has to serve what you Filipinos, want to express yourself and how you want to express yourself. It needs to carry your values, the cultural identities, or even your identities. How do you want the world to know you best as people coming from the Philippines? So I think in that sense, English is great because at least it allows people that power. It gives us that power to appropriate and to use it creatively and to use it in our own ways. So even Taglish, as I said, is a great example of how you have localized or how you have appropriated the language to serve your purposes, to communicate among yourselves. So, and that Taglish is not necessarily understood by others outside your communities, but I think it is something of your own, something you created, something you should be proud of. And that is really my point. Yeah. And also now there is a debate about standard English. And but what is standard? People